Hello again. Today we're working on the Mini. As you can see, it's dark outside. Finally got a second this weekend to spend some time with my kids and do a little bit of work on the Mini. So we just decided, since the chassis is pretty much a roller, that we'd start cutting on the body and see what we had to do with that. So we did a bunch of work. Yesterday, me and my son got it all stripped out underneath so we could start cutting. Turns out this car is a lot worse than I originally thought. This thing's been whacked on every corner multiple times. It's got serious amounts of Bondo in it, so I feel not bad at all for cutting on this thing. This thing is a total basket case. I'll show you some of the stuff, but so we decided yesterday we'd rip all the fuel lines out and anything that was left. It had like a trailer axle holding the rear end up, got rid of that. And then since we had it on the hoist, and cutting stuff is way easier when you're doing it on the hoist from underneath than it is to crawl in a little tiny car, we decided to just start cutting the floor out. So you can see over here, there's a big pile of floor. Here's the main part of the floor. That section there is the middle of the floor. That's the width of the chassis. It'll make more sense once the body is set on the chassis, how this is all gonna work. So you can see it's still got the e-brake handle pulled up. There's that. So we haven't started cutting anything on the inside of the car, or I haven't started cutting anything on here. That'll be the next step, the last step before we put the chassis on. But as you can see in here, it's a little bit dark, but we cut a massive hole. I'm leaving that rear bulkhead. I'm hoping I can make it work. It's a lot simpler. It kind of keeps the chassis attached, but we cut out everything else. Pretty much half the stuff we were cutting through in the back was rust. So it's kind of good to get rid of all that stuff in one swoop. I'll just lift it up here. So here we got it lifted up. As you can see, here's all the stock front suspension barely hanging in there. These things are very strange. The whole front subframe is just held in by a couple bolts that would normally hold the bumper, and then a couple bolts that are just on rubber isolators, and then just the strut towers up here. So the only thing I have to do to pop this out is just undo the last couple bolts that hold the struts, and the whole thing will fall out. So you can see here, more of the cutting. We put some braces in here. This brace is actually the right height so that when I set the body on, these braces will sit directly on top of the frame rail and set the proper height on the edge of the frame once it's on. So I put two in there. Usually when you cut out a car this excessively, it starts to do some pretty strange things. It'll spread apart, and this car has been hit pretty hard, so I'm sure a lot of the chassis or the body was under tension. So as you can see there, it's all cut out. It'll look a little bit different. And this is what I was talking about. It's hard to see, but you can see it in there. This thing was whacked really hard in the passenger rear corner, and it's had some seriously crappy body work done. It's been hit there. You can see it's had some stuff pop riveted into it, and then it was all rusty back here. This is the underside of the rear hatch, and then it's been whacked over here a little bit into the quarter. It's been all pounded out. So this is the perfect car to have one purpose in life as a burnout car, because it would never be a showroom condition Mini ever again. So here's all the back where we cut it out. I have some more cutting to do on this piece right here. I have to make room for the wheel tub. This is going to have some 28-inch wheel tubs in it. So right now, from that part to this part is 26 inches. And to kind of keep the wheel well centered, I have to keep going back a little bit. I could change the wheel well a bit, but with how poor the bodywork is in this one back corner, I don't really want to mess with the body too much. So As you can see here, the steering wheel will come out next, the pedal box is gonna come out, and I'm gonna pull the front subframe out, and then you can kind of see I've been already cutting up the firewall there. You see that straight line, and that'll be the next thing, is that we're gonna cut out the firewall to the bottom of one of the main cross members, and that should give it enough room to slip the body on. And from there, then we're just gonna have to figure out where everything's gonna end up, and we'll end up making this thing somewhat of a roller. I still don't have the front brakes. It's still cold, but we're working on it. So we got the front suspension out. Did some more hacking, but it came out fairly easily. It just has these big bolts that hold it to the top of the strut, and the things have like rubber coil springs in these cars, rubber dampeners, I guess. No shocks or no actual metal coil springs, but they have that. So I cut out a section of the firewall already, as you can see here, if I can get up in here. So this is the front cross member that holds the front subframe in. I'm gonna leave this in till I get the whole body welded to the chassis. It's pretty beefy, so I don't wanna have stuff moving around before I get the chassis actually all secured. But I did some measuring, and this section right here is gonna interfere with the control arm, so I'm gonna end up cutting this section out. Most of the firewall, this is like the inner wheel tub here to the edge. You can see some wicked speed holes and stuff in there. It's gonna get cut back to about here, so all this stuff will be gone to fit the engine, and then I'm just gonna build a new flat firewall, and then I'm probably gonna also replace the front section of the floor there. You can see my cross member a little bit better in this light. So pretty much everything up until this cross member from here forward will be a new firewall that comes up and attaches to the bottom side of the dash. So all this area in here is gonna disappear to give room to turn and give it a little more space for everything else, the engine and stuff. I'm not gonna do the half setback firewall like I did on the Chevette, because I don't really need to on this. So that's that. Here's the front. This is where the body bolted to the subframe, so that's where I'm gonna tie in. I'm gonna build little tabs that come up depending on where the chassis lines up. You can only take so many measurements and try to figure stuff out, but you can peek in there. It looks like it's had some dents pounded out there, and it's had some more dents pounded out here. So this thing's, like I said, it's been hit on every corner multiple times. So I'm gonna keep cutting, and then hopefully the next clip will be me trying to jam this chassis underneath this thing. So hang on. So here we have the chassis. I put it on this furniture cart that I got. It's supposed to hold 1,000 pounds, so I'm hoping it holds the chassis and the body, because I don't think it probably weighs much more than that once it's mated together. So I'm gonna set up the camera and show you as I lower it down, and then we'll come back and I'll show you how I have it kind of set up on the chassis, and hopefully everything fits. I might have to do some more cutting. I prepped all the metal and stuff so I can tack the edge of the body to the edge of the chassis if it's okay. I might not do that right away. I might put the arms of the hoist under the chassis and lift it all up as a unit. So if I want to move stuff around, check for squareness, I can do that before I commit. Here you can see the rear end in there. You can see the leaf springs. It's tucked up pretty in there, but it's centered in the wheel well, and that's what I wanted. I dried a wheel on it already and it looks good, so that was the main thing. I'll have to do a little more trimming at the back, like right there, inside. So that little corner of the cab corner, I'm gonna call it, or the rear corner, is gonna have to get trimmed out, but it should work out all right. All right, skip forward a little bit. Sometimes you get in the groove, and I meant just to plop the body on and kind of seeing how it fit, and somehow I started welding on stuff, and now we're here. So I squared up the body on the chassis, lined up the wheel wells to the center line of the axle, ended up cutting out some more stuff to make things fit. This car's pretty twisted up. I had to make some adjustments and stuff in the back because it was like pushed almost an inch to one side at the very back from being hit. So we'll just walk around to the back here and you can have a look of how everything fits. So I just welded a bar. The bar goes down into the factory. It's just some 1x1 I had kicking around. I welded a bar where the factory bumper mounts kind of are, I'm guessing. I don't know, I don't have a bumper for it. So and then I just weld that piece into the cross member. It's all welded underneath. I'm gonna cap these off and make them look a little bit nicer. But when I started measuring points, it was off to this side a bunch, so I had to bring it back. And you'll see I messed up on one other thing after from doing that. So here it is in the back. You can see I cut out the rear for the tubs, and I did that before I moved the back of the body over, so now I have a little bit hanging over the edge there, and then on the other side it's hanging over the edge, but it's only metal. It can be fixed. This is what it looks on the inside. You can see what I mean by the bars going across. So these bars were set at where I wanted the floor height. So we just dropped the body on, they touched the frame, and then that's where it was. I ended up having to cut out a bunch in the front, and then these footwells here were just absolutely rusted out. So I cut it back to this cross member, and then the new firewall is gonna come here. So I'll just tie that piece in. I'll have outriggers going from the frame to the body like I do on a car when I do a roll cage. So you can see the back of the suspension there. There's my mount that I'm playing around with for the lower control arm mount. And then as I'm welding in, I'm cutting away at the same time. So as I make things more secure to the body, like I have it welded all the way along the floor there, except for one spot where the outrigger is gonna go across. So as I weld, I cut away at the same time to kind of counteract the twisting of the car. So we'll just come around to the front here. So you can see the front suspension there. I made a mount to tie into the front bumper there, nothing crazy, just some angle, cut on some 45s. Here's the cross member that used to hold the front subframe. It's still in there for now until I can weld in some more stuff to kind of make it secure. Once I get the front outriggers built, then I'll cut the rest of the firewall out and have the front horns attached. So once I can kind of secure it a little more, I can cut a little more away. If you just start cutting this thing apart, it'll turn into a waffle, for better words. But it's coming along pretty good. Here's more from this side. You can see the diff. There'll be a ton of sheet metal work, but with this, I'm just gonna use some thicker stuff, easy to weld, something like 16 gauge. I'm not really worried about lightweight with this car because it's already as light as it needs to be. So that's where I'm gonna leave this video at. The next video will just be continuing on, adding more outriggers. I'm hoping to get this thing a roller, drop the engine and tranny into it once I can get these cross members cut out and the other cross members put in. And then we can do a mock-up and see what this thing's gonna look like with the blower sticking out the hood. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned.